Hey, this is Lori, also known as Inspired Act. Thought I would share another video with you on some self-help techniques that you can do for carpal tunnel. A lot of people go and get a carpal tunnel release, which is basically where they take, you have like this rubber band that wraps around your tendons in your wrist. There's the flexor and extensor retinaculum, and what they tend to do is they just go in and clip that retinaculum, that little band, not band-aid, rubber band that's in your wrist to kind of release the tension on the hands and on the tendons that run into the hand. And what we tend to find is that once that clip takes place, sometimes adhesions begin to affect the area, creating more of a problem than what was ever there to begin with all of the scar tissue building up, affecting the sensation and the range of motion and all of the workings of the hand. So I thought I would share with you some of the things that you can do to help yourself if you're experiencing carpal tunnel pain. So the first thing that you can do is, of course, create traction by pulling your wrist and wiggling it. You're just opening up that area. Another thing you can do is rub the area all through this wrist zone. But what we tend to find is more than just it being this retinaculum, it's usually not the problem. The problem tends to lie more in the forearms, on the flexor and extensor side. So it's really good, especially if you know someone that can work on you to help relieve it. But if you don't, these are the self-help techniques. And one of the things is just to apply pressure and circle in the arm. It's better if the arm is extended straight rather than bent, just because it feels that it's harder to get to some of the deeper areas. And what you'll also find is you can feel little bones, little bones of the ulnar side and the radial side of the bones, and you can find where they poke out, and you can just press. Those are called the insertion and the origin points, and you can rub circles all around in here. Sometimes you can just use a little bit of coconut oil, use 3 fingers and press firmly, trying to kind of like divide the tissues between those 2 bones, if you could imagine, in your forearm. So you're just kind of, this is the 2 bones, and there's muscle in between there. You're running your fingers up and down through that area to try to release some of the adhesions and increase blood flow in the area. So we've got pulling. You could even circumduct the fingers, which is just kind of drawing, pulling and drawing circles. Another thing is wiggling the knuckles and the bones that run down from the knuckle to the wrist. So you can kind of wiggle, even if you just kind of, you know how someone gives you a really bad handshake, or you kind of torture someone, you squeeze onto their hand and you roll your hands back and forth and you kind of create a crunchy sound. I'm not saying to do that, but what I am saying is even just kind of pressing those areas together and rolling does create some motion in those areas. And again, you can use your fingers between all of the bones and to create some space in there. You'll probably find that in the thumb region you can feel this is actually an acupressure point where you press in firmly. That's really good for headaches. It's really good for water retention. It's not good if you are expecting and you're pregnant, so that's a place that you definitely want to not mess with if that is the case. But for headaches, even menstrual cycle cramps, pinching this area and holding it for like 5 minutes sometimes can give you some relief. But anyways, that's still working in with the hand, all of the areas. Again, this portion of the hand tends to create a lot of tension. It works really hard. So using your thumb really firmly, pressing all along the whole edge and the middle of that big muscle. So that's one thing you can do. If you tend to have like issues with rehabbing, grabbing beans and rice, not like cooked beans and rice, but like you know, the uncooked dried beans, dried rice, and you can kind of work your forearms that way. But anyway, it's usually drawing circles with your fingers or your thumb, pulling, kind of creating traction, and massaging up and down through the area that that rubber band or flexor and extensor retinaculum lie. So anyways, I just thought I would share that with you. You would finish off when you would work it yourself with just kind of gripping your forearm and like you're kind of like squeezing the blood into the elbow up the arm. That's kind of what you're kind of doing. And some people just shaking out the wrists back and forth is really good. Also, some good forearm stretches. I like to lay it on a table. I'll show you that part next for the forearms, stretching them both ways. Okay, so I thought I would show you on just a piano bench that I have here to give you the idea, but if you have like a countertop or a table that's the appropriate height, you can use that as well. So to release some of the tension on this portion of your forearm, what you would want to do, well, you know, you could make fists. And you would, see now my height is a little off on this, but you would create fists, and then from here, you would just slowly try to bring your wrist down towards the bottom of the surface that you're pressing towards, so you're pressing down. And you'll feel a really good stretch in here, and what you'll find, as you see in me, my hands are wanting to release that fist, and it's really tight. It might even be really hard for you, even if your fists are tight, it's really hard to hold that fist. So even open hands, you can get some release just from doing that. And then the opposite way to open up this side and create some space in here is to turn your fingers towards you and then drop the wrist. Now if you're at a total 90-degree angle in the wrist, where you're totally like this, you're not going to get as much of a stretch unless you're really, really tight. But if you begin then to lean the body back and kind of shorten the angle in the wrist area, you'll get more of a stretch. And, you know, it depends on where you're starting from. So what you're trying to do is press the palms down, you're leaning back. And you're just leaning back until you feel a good stretch in your forearms. So anyways, those are two things that you can do. Two stretches along with the other things that I showed you. Hopefully this gives you some relief with your carpal tunnel. And until then, have a great day.